Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Israel steps up the airstrikes on Gaza as it prepares for a ground assault. President Biden warns Israel that any occupation of Gaza would be a big mistake. Egypt is yet to open the border crossing as thousands of fleeing Palestinians continue to wait. Israel and Hamas rule out reports of a ceasefire near the Egyptian border. Sensex and the Nifty end with marginal losses after a range-bound session. The rupee ends at a record, closing low against the dollar as tensions in the Middle East keep Brent crude prices above $90 a barrel. HDFC Bank reports a mixed bag for Q2, profits at nearly 16,000 crore rupees ahead of estimates. Net interest income of over 27,000 crore rupees marginally misses estimates. This is the first earnings report after the big merger. The International Olympic Committee votes to include cricket in the 2028 Los Angeles Games. 4 other games, including flag football, lacrosse and squash, also added to the roster. A tax setback for Airtel and Vodafone. Supreme Court rejects a petition from telecom companies to treat license fee as revenue expenditure, upholds the tax department's appeal to treat license fee paid after July 1999 as capital expenditure. After Chinese mobile phone makers, laptop manufacturers are set to face tax scrutiny. Both direct and indirect tax intelligence wings allege several violations, including undervaluing products. That's an exclusive. The government is in the final stages of fixing eligibility norm for direct listing of Indian companies on foreign exchanges. Sources say companies could need a minimum period of operation in India. The government is considering 8 or 9 specified jurisdictions for overseas listings. Big breakthrough for blood cancer treatment in India. The drug regulator approves India's first CAR T-cell therapy, which is expected to be 90% cheaper at 30 to 40 lakhs. It's been developed by ImmunoAct, an IIT Mumbai incubated company in which Laurus Labs holds 34% stake. Big development for cricket enthusiasts in a landmark decision. The International Olympic Committee has approved including cricket in the 2028 Los Angeles Games. Baseball, flag football, lacrosse and squash are the other 4 games that will be included in the 2028 Olympics. Reliance Foundation chairperson and IOC member Nita Ambani believes this decision will create deeper engagement for the Olympic movement in newer geographies and at the same time provide a boost to cricket's growing international popularity. IOC President Thomas Bach also commended the contributions of Nita Ambani, saying she presented the concept of including cricket in the Olympic Games to IOC members.
Historic moment for India as cricket is finally a part of the Olympics. Your initial reactions, first comments?
I think I'm so delighted. It's celebrations, I think. And this means a lot, not only for the 1.4 billion Indians, but I think everybody in South Asia. I think Olympics will now have a deeper engagement with all these countries in South Asia, like India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. So very happy day. And it couldn't have come better. I mean, we are hosting the 141st Olympic session in Mumbai after 40 years. World Cup is being played in India, and this historic decision and voting went for it in India. So everything has come together.
Yeah.
And I think only good things.
So what were the kind of conversations that you've had with IOC to make this happen, also with the LA 2028 team as well?
So this has been going on for the last 4 years. You know, we've had so many discussions and deliberations about having cricket as an Olympic sport. And finally, the historic decision had to be made today in Mumbai. So I'm just very happy.
Yeah. And in general, Reliance has worked extensively with different kinds of sports apart from cricket. And during the inauguration of the 141st IOC session, which happened on Saturday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also expressed his intention to host the Youth Olympics as well as the 2036 Olympics. What is the kind of infrastructure? Sports is becoming popular in country, but what is the kind of infrastructure how will Reliance work with the government to make a successful, play at Youth Olympics and the 2036 Olympics?
I think not only Reliance, I think many corporates are going to kind of help in this endeavor. If if we win the bid for 2030 Youth Olympics or 2036 Summer Olympics. I think it's a coming together of everyone for this dream for Indian children.
Well, it certainly is a coming together of the big aspiration of including cricket as part of the Olympic program once again, and that decision has been taken today at the 141st IOC session. Joy Bhattacharya and Gaurav Kalra join us now. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us. Joy, to you first. Look, let's talk about the significance and the implications of this big cricket inclusion. I think everyone's ignoring the other three sports that have also been included for 2028 for the Olympics at the LA. But while it's a big moment for cricket, it's also a big moment for the Olympics, given the kind of eyeballs, the kind of visibility, the kind of ratings and the kind of commercials that cricket involves.
I couldn't agree more, Shireen. Absolutely. I mean, if you look at it, cricket is going to benefit from being in the Olympics, but the Olympics are going to benefit far more for cricket being a part of it. Because what also happens is not just India, a large part of other South Asian nations come into play for trying to get a medal. And, I think they'll choose 5 or 6 countries to play because they can't have too many pitches. But the benefit that the Olympic movement will get, and the Olympics has been very smart about this. Over time, they've introduced events which they feel are the events of the future that give them more eyeballs, stuff like rhythmic gymnastics. They are starting breaking in the 2024 Olympics. The idea is to always try and catch where the new eyeballs are. And I think cricket fits that perfectly. It's the most watched sport, which is not at all a part of the Olympics. If you notice, they couldn't make the NFL a part of it because there's too much violence. But the tamer version of the NFL, the American football, is flag football. And they've managed to get that in baseball in as well.
Yes, it is certainly a win-win and a big win for the Olympics to get cricket included as part of LA 28. Gaurav, and we've been discussing this, and I think when I did that interview with the IOC chief on the 1st of September, it seemed fairly certain that the T20 format had just made it viable for cricket's inclusion, including all of the other factors that Joy just listed out. But without the T20 format, it would have been a no-go. So, appropriate format with everything else falling in place and cricket all set for LA.
Yes, Shireen, it had to be the T20 format because in any of its other forms, whether it's Test cricket or one-day cricket, the World Cup of which is going on right now, it was impossible for cricket to be a part of the Olympic program because if you look at every other sport that's played at the Olympics, it is finished off in a certain amount of certain duration of time. And I like the point Joy makes there about how this is as important for the Olympics as it is for cricket. But I think if we just isolate it and look at it from the point of view of simply cricket and what it means to the sport, even today, despite its substantial growth and despite the number of markets that it goes into, cricket is a fairly small sport. It's played to a very high degree in a few countries, but then everywhere else, it's a much smaller fan base. And I think this gives cricket the opportunity to be right at the center, at the heart of world sport, because that is what the Olympics are. It is for those 15-20 days, it becomes the center of the world, not just of the sporting world. So to introduce a sport and all its nuance and its magnificence to that big world audience, I think it's a giant leap for cricket.
A giant leap for cricket. And Joy, just to take that point forward, as Gaurav was rightly pointing out, yes, cricket is the sport in India, but that's not necessarily the case for a large part of the world. This will further the internationalization of cricket, so to speak. We've just seen cricket taking off quite literally in the US. So Gaurav's point of the internationalization of cricket and this being the best sort of arena to take that aspiration forward.
Completely agree with you. It started with the T20 format, as Gaurav pointed out, in 2005. But the IPL, and after that, the one thing the ICC did in their wisdom was make sure that all T20 matches were international matches. A lot of countries, ODI cricket is not played in, as in Test or ODI cricket is limited to a few countries. But international cricket, all T20 internationals are internationals. And what that has meant is a lot more countries have actually come into the fold, and not just in men's cricket. In women's cricket, there's some fantastic stories from Thailand Papua New Guinea. There are lots of great stories where so-called hitherto not known cricket nations have come forward and are playing cricket. And I think the Olympic movement just pushes that to the next level. And this is excellent for cricket as well. There's no denying it. It's excellent for cricket as well. And remember, it means also that countries like India, perhaps Pakistan, Sri Lanka, they have a chance at a few other medals as well. And if you look at Pakistan or Sri Lanka's profile, there hasn't been much opportunity for gold medals in this Olympics other than hockey. So I think there you're getting something out here, which is another opportunity for a lot of people to engage in, hoping for some sort of Olympic glory.
And that will certainly be India's hope as well, wouldn't it, gentlemen? But Gaurav, let's talk about what we heard there from the LA director, talking about Virat Kohli and how he enjoys the kind of social media attention, social media following that even Tiger Woods and LeBron James together don't enjoy. But he's going to be 40 in 2028. So what could the Indian Olympic squad look like?
Yeah, that I think is going to be a very interesting sort of dynamic around that time. I think whatever the case might be, it will be the full strength squad that will play at the Olympics, because yes, the Indian squad that won the gold medal at the Asian Games was essentially the A team, and that is because obviously there is a World Cup coming up. The women's team that competed was the main team, and even the women's team that played at the Commonwealth Games was the main team. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the makeup of that squad is. And I think for players such as Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli, players in sort of that age group, there will be that gnawing feeling about maybe, just maybe, they can wrap up their careers by being Olympians. Because make no mistake, Shireen, and while they compete at World Cups and all the major accomplishments they have as individuals, the tag of an Olympian and success at the Olympic Games will mean a lot to anyone who's a sports person. It is a significant achievement for them in their lives to be able to put up a medal on their mantelpiece. And I think that's going to be, something that a lot of cricketers will treasure for their lives. In fact, if you speak to some of the old-timers, I think Joy must have as well. The guys who went to the Commonwealth Games, I think it was in 1998, played the 50-over format there, and they still talk fondly about it, not just about being able to compete at a multidiscipline games, but also just to be able to rub shoulders with other athletes, with the hockey team. We saw lovely pictures of the Indian cricket team actually cheering the hockey team on. They can train with other athletes, learn about things that they are doing from a sports science, from a team bonding perspective, and pass on information. So I think it's a win-win in all scenarios, Shireen, and I think that's why, from the perspective of the sport, this is a massive day.
It is a big day indeed. But Joy, let's shift away from cricket to talk about India's aspiration to host the Olympics. And the Prime Minister, speaking at the inaugural of the 141st session, made it very clear that yes, India is interested not just for the Youth Olympics but for the Olympics in 2036. Now, it's a long distance. A lot of work will need to be done. Specifically, a lot of work on the governance side as well. A lot of fixes will be needed on the governance side. But what do you make of the aspiration to host the Olympics?
Again, as I said, Gaurav will tell you, and he's been a part of the sports ecosystem for a while, that for the last 2 years, work has already commenced. And work has commenced to make a serious bid for 2036 much, much earlier. And therefore, we are dead serious about it. Obviously, this cannot be done without backing at the highest levels in the land. There's a lot to do, but again, as we say that, just as India has to benefit from, will hugely benefit from hosting an Olympics in terms of, our pride of place among sporting nations of the world will hugely, IOC will hugely benefit from having India as a host, because it is a very, very large part. It's the largest, most populous country in the world. And so we are talking about something that, if the bid is correct and if everything is in place, I think they look at India's bid very, very favorably. This is something we are dead serious about. And this has not been just said off the cuff. This is something that's been in planning for the last 3-4 years already.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. In fact, that was pretty evident through that conversation that I did have with the IOC chief, where he made it clear that, look, our hearts and our doors are open should India want to take this forward. But Gaurav, you know, a lot has also changed in the way the IOC is bidding out the Olympic Games. They're also mindful of the cost overruns. They're mindful of the white elephants that get created and, you know, the countries that have to suffer the economic sort of devastation on account of that. So in many ways, as Joy was also pointing out, this is a young democracy. It is one of the fastest growing large economies of the world. So the pieces falling in place for an eventual bid?
Yes, and I think, Shireen, you'll also have insight into this because a lot of what you cover, the corporate side of the country, they will be very enthused with the idea of participating in this. We've seen this happen with public-private partnerships, with, you know, for instance, the work that Reliance Foundation does, the work that other corporates do, which we heard Mrs. Ambani just reference in that interview you played out before we started talking. And I think from that point of view, it's very important for India to showcase what it can bring to the sporting universe. It no longer is a fringe sporting nation. We saw the success that India's athletes are having, but we've also seen the success of hosting mega events. The Cricket World Cup's on right now. You know, multiple world championships have been held here, hockey, boxing, etc. Yes, there is a problem sometimes when it comes to hosting Olympic Games. For instance, you know, I remember covering the Rio Olympics from the ground in 2016, Shireen, and I think subsequent to that Olympics, 6 months down the line, those stadia went into disrepair, and there were challenges from a management perspective, and whether these become white elephants, etc. We've heard those phrases in the past. However, there will be learnings from that, and I think this will be a sustainable project, a project that India has, as Joy said, invested in the last few years, and now has a runway of 10 or 12 years before they actually have to execute it on the ground. I think the Youth Olympics is a good idea because it can almost be a test event for what the Olympic Games will ultimately end up being. But, you know, I think the signs are all there. And just like Joy mentioned, I think the signs are that the Olympic movement needs to engage with the most populous and one of the youngest nations in the world.
Well, we're certainly seeing that happen with the 141st session being held here in India, in Mumbai, after 40 years. And in many ways, Gaurav and Joy, what you spoke of, the changes that we are seeing with the Olympic movement itself, some of that will be in play at Paris 2024, especially on the point that Gaurav was making on the sustainability and the viability of the Games. Many changes have been adopted by the IOC, which will be in play in Paris in 2024. Well, gentlemen, it is a long road ahead, but today is most definitely a big day, not just a big day for cricket, but also a big day for the Olympics. Joy and Gaurav, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC-TV18. That's it then on this edition of Business 360. Stay tuned. There's a lot more coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.